Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 14.4.2 and iOS 14.5 Beta 8 have been out for a few days and a few weeks, depending on which version we're talking about. So I wanted to share some new features or some new changes that have been found, and then also talk about the overall experience of both iOS 14.4.2, 14.5 Beta 8, and all the information based off the YouTube community poll. So the first thing is a new feature or something that was recognized by a viewer that sent this in. And if you're using your Apple Watch to unlock your iPhone when you're wearing a mask, if your Apple Watch is too far away, you'll get this notice that says unlock with Apple Watch is not available. Apple Watch moved out of range. So maybe you set your Apple Watch down somewhere, although generally it wouldn't unlock it anyway. But I suppose if you stretched your arms out far enough, that could be a potential for that to show up. So you do need to be nearby for that to happen. Now, the other new thing that was discovered was by Braden, and this is specific to the YouTube app. Apparently, YouTube is rolling out some changes, and if you're changing your quality, it can look a little bit different. Generally, it will look more like this when you're changing your quality. Now it has this for some people, where it says Auto, Higher Picture Quality, Data Saver, and Advanced, and then once you tap on the Advanced, you can select your different resolution, for example, up to 4K. So it just depends on which YouTube app you have. Sometimes YouTube rolls out different features to different people to try it out. I personally have not seen this, but some people are seeing this. Now, as far as the overall experience of iOS 14.4.2, I've talked about this at length since it's been out for a few weeks, but the problems don't seem to be getting any better. I'm running it on my 11 Pro Max, and the overall issues generally are focused around Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and LTE connectivity, for example. Many people didn't see a difference between iOS 14.4.2 and iOS 14.4.1, but generally Bluetooth is an issue. Apps lagging and stuttering when you're closing them from time to time. Sometimes they're crashing, they're lagging, and just general slowness seems to be a problem for some people. Also, the phone seems to be getting unusually hot for some people, although less with 14.4.2 than the previous version, but I think that'll be fixed in upcoming versions. Also, people continue to have issues with iMessage, for example. So iMessage is acting odd, and music is acting odd for some people as well. So there's continued issues. These should be fixed along with all the other issues or new features coming to iOS 14.5. Now, there was a surprise this week with iOS 14.5 Beta 8. This is the first Beta 8 in the 0.1 updates. So generally Apple will go up to Beta 8, for example, with iOS 14 or iOS 13 or iOS 12, but not after the initial release. Generally they'll be up to 7 or 6 or 5 beta updates, and then they'll release it. So this is a little bit new. I think they were waiting for the Apple event that comes out next week, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Now, I've been using iOS 14.5 Beta 8 full-time on my iPhone 12 Pro Max. I also have it on the iPhone 11 here, as well as iPadOS on my iPad Pro 12.9 from 2020. And so these updates seem to be a little bit better than before, not hugely different, but the first day, battery was absolutely terrible for me. So it was doing a lot in the background, a lot of background processing going on, definitely something going on with that, but it's since improved. And I'll talk about overall battery life in just a moment. The other issue I continue to have is Bluetooth. I thought this would be fixed by now, but for example, if I connect my AirPods Pro, maybe connect them, sometimes they'll have some static and they'll cut out. Then I'll have to reconnect them and they work just fine. And then they'll work fine 90% of the time. But these are problems I didn't have before, where they would just sort of cut out from time to time. It's very odd, it's very unusual, and not something I normally see with these sort of updates or with Apple products, for example. So you'll see it's connected. Sometimes it just acts really odd, and I'm not sure why that is. That carries across to AirPods Pro, AirPods Max, any Bluetooth headphone that you're connecting to. And a lot of people in the YouTube community poll are saying the exact same thing, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connectivity issues. While I haven't had any Wi-Fi or 5G, 4G switching issues with this update, quite a few people have, and it seems to be an issue going back and forth between 5G and 4G and back and forth between those. So there's definitely some issues going on with that. So that's still the number one issue with this, as well as AirPod connectivity issues where they don't switch automatically from, say, your iPhone to your iPad and back. That seems to work okay for me. The major issue I have with the AirPods is going from the iPhone to the Mac. Sometimes that doesn't work, but generally between the iPad and the iPhone, it works well. Also, people are saying that their widgets are still disappearing. So if you're using the weather widget, for example, or a different widget, sometimes it just goes away and then it will come back. It will sort of disappear and then it will just show back up. So for some reason that keeps happening. Hopefully it'll be fixed in the release candidate. And also people are having random display issues. So stuttering and flickering, and people are still having green tint. Some people have said that they're even worse than it was before. And others are saying even the black colors are sort of off for some people. Some people are also saying touch responsiveness is off when you're using certain apps. They didn't specify which apps per se, but some apps seem to have touch responsiveness issues for some people. So there's definitely some issues going on there. Now, generally for me, my overall performance has been good, and I haven't had any issues with it whatsoever. Performance has been nice and smooth for me on my iPhone 12 Pro Max, and the iPhone 11 is giving me the same sort of experience. I'm not having any issues with that whatsoever, and no problems there. Now, as far as performance and overall experience on the iPad, for example, I've talked about this at length where I had some issues with battery, and that seems to still be an issue. So on my iPad Pro, it's been working fine, but again, my battery is just okay. I'm at 51%, and if we take a look at settings, we'll go to battery, wait for it to load here, go to the last 10 days, and you'll see it was last charged to 63% at 1:25 p.m. today. That was before recording a different video about a 1 year later version of this particular iPad. And I did talk about the battery life using coconut battery. This has a battery health of 96.6% with 102 cycles currently. So it's not that old of a battery. It's still only getting me about 5 hours of screen on time. Like I said before, if this does not improve with future versions, then I'll have to completely wipe it and start again. Someone else has mentioned in the comments as well that they're having similar issues with this beta, where the just battery life overall is not what you would expect with an iPad. Everything else on the iPad is absolutely fine, just as fast, if not faster, than when I first got it. So no complaints there. Of course, we should see a new iPad at the upcoming Apple event very soon. Now, my overall battery life on my main phone here is pretty good. I really have no problems. I said it was bad the first day. After that, it sort of stabilized. So if we go to settings, go to battery health, you'll see I'm at 100% battery health. I fast charge it wirelessly using MagSafe every single night. I've had no issues, and then it's wirelessly charged when I drive. If we go to the last 10 days, you'll see yesterday I had a screen on time of 2 hours and 32 minutes, screen off time of 3 hours and 58 minutes, and I only used 25% of the battery. This is an increase over what I had before, where I was getting about 2 hours at 50%. And now if we go and use this 100% of the way, if I continued to use this, I would get 9 to 10 hours of screen on time and even more screen off time. So it's actually doing quite good now. It's back to about the 10 to 12 hours of screen on time, depending on which day we're looking at. If we go a few days ago, you'll see I used almost 100% at 4 hours and 14 minutes of screen on time. That was probably the worst, and that's when we had different betas and things. So now it seems to be okay, and it's pretty much back to what you would expect. Now I'm at 50% of my battery life with 4 hours or 3 hours and 55 minutes of screen on time, 2 hours and 58 minutes of screen off time. It's doing quite well now. I'm happy with that. I go to bed with over 50% and I have no issues whatsoever. This phone has been on a lot today just for recording videos and things, and seems to be doing just fine whether I'm recording video or playing a game or more. So it's doing really well as far as that goes. Now that leads me to, should you install iOS 14.4.2? Well, if you haven't installed it already on your main device, you probably won't at this point unless you weren't familiar with it. But iOS 14.4.2 has important security updates, so I highly recommend it until iOS 14.5 comes out. Now, should you install iOS 14.5 Beta 8? Well, if you're already on the betas, absolutely. I've said this before. We need to test that, report feedback, and let Apple know what's going on so that they can fix the issues. The major issues with Bluetooth that we're all having, for example. Make sure you're reporting that in feedback. They take a log off your phone, a system log, and then determine what the most important issues are and then fix that. But if you are on iOS 14.4.2 and wanting to try the betas, I said this in the update video, This is probably the time where it's safe to try it, but if you're still worried about problems, I would just hold off until the final release, which shouldn't be too far away at this point. So the final release of iOS 14.5 will come after the release candidate. Based off what we know, it looks like, according to Mark Gurman, we should have an announcement on Tuesday from Apple as far as new products, and that after that event, according to Mark Gurman, we should have some sort of announcement, or during that event, we should have an announcement of when to expect the final release. So I would expect the release candidate after the event on Tuesday, and then after that, we'll know the final release, whether it be later in the week or the following week at the latest. So I would expect it probably later in the week, like Apple normally does, but it could come the week of the 25th. But we'll have to wait and see on Tuesday to see what exactly happens with that. But it's very close, and then we'll get into iOS 14.6 maybe, and we'll have new iOS 14 updates until September when they release iOS 15. We'll see iOS 15 for the first time on June 7th, and you'll see here at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see that event. We'll see iOS 15, iPadOS 15, and all the others, macOS 12, and we'll get an idea of what that is. We'll have a beta that day, and then we'll have the final release in September. So we're still not done with iOS 14. We'll have a few more versions, I think, probably up to 14.7, 14.8 maybe, before we see iOS 15 in September. Now, as far as the overall YouTube community poll and what you had to say, here are all the statistics based off the YouTube community poll that I pulled from the comments that you made. If you gave me information about your battery or lag or freezing or heat, and also what device you're using as well. So these are all the devices people are using that commented in the poll. And if you did comment, I really appreciate it, as it helps us get a better idea of what to expect overall from this update. Now let's go into YouTube and take a look at the community poll. So as you can see, it's been a little while. I'm actually getting ready for the weekend at this point, but it has 11,000 votes at this point. So I really appreciate everyone that voted. 18% of you said it's great. 3% said it's terrible, which is pretty low, but pretty consistent. 5% are still having some bugs. 63% are on the public version of iOS 14.4.2 or earlier. And 10% of you are not using iPhone, so you're using Android or something else. Even Windows Phone, potentially. Someone commented last week. Now, there's 123 comments at the time of this video. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of them. So we'll sort by newest first, and now let's see what you have to say. And StarTech77 said, it's been great, 12 Pro Max. Larry B said, updated my daily driver iPhone 11 due to issues with messages on iOS 14.4.2. The beta fixed the issues I was having. Nicole Still Plays said, battery life on my iPad Pro from 2020 has decreased battery life when playing games. The same issue happens on my iPhone 10 and iPhone 11 Pro Max. Other than that, I've had no further issues with iOS and iPadOS 14.5 Beta 8, but the two new Siri voices do sound a little depressed whenever you trigger it via the Hey command and then saying the assistant's name. They need to sound happier. Jeffrey Venner said, battery is better with this beta iPhone 12. Nicholas said, display problems are really bad with beta 8. Raised blacks are driving me crazy. And that's an issue they do say that they're fixing with this, so we'll have to wait and see what the release candidate has as far as that goes. Johnny Martin 10 said, I took the plunge based on your reviews. iPhone 12 is incredibly smooth. No battery issues. Everything works better than ever. Not too impressed so far with battery on the 2020 iPad Pro 12.9. I seem to be using losing a lot of power very quickly compared to 14.4.2. Hopefully it will settle over the weekend. Overall, I rate this beta as good as a release candidate. Hasib Niaz says, better than others, but still have heating problems. Leonid K said, weather widget disappeared from the home screen a few times. Otherwise, it's not bad. Mauricio Rodriguez says, I would honestly want an RC today and a final version the day of the event. Amit Karar said, a couple of times the keyboard and spotlight search hung up on me, and the only way to get it to work was to restarting my 12 Pro Max. Otherwise, very stable and blazing fast. Aaron Lee says, Shortcuts widget still broken, but has been for a long time, so not exclusive to this release, 11 Pro Max. Daniel Printy says, my iPhone 12 mini seems fine, although my battery life seems a little short. My iPad 12.9 2020 has been rock solid with no problems. The name's Gabe said, using iPhone XS Max, really good stability and performance. Using this phone as my primary device. Have no complaints, just waiting for the final update. Matt Mills says, 11 Pro Max podcast episodes take up to an hour or more to come to the new episodes list. Widgets go away until you swipe back between pages and then it comes back. RAM management is very poor. Apps keep resetting in the background. Calls keep dropping randomly. The only app I've noticed as far as RAM management is actually Twitter. I've had some issues going back and forth with Twitter, but specific to that app, nothing else. So I think it's an issue with that app specifically. Apple Tech said it's been great for me on my 12 Pro Max. No issues as far as I can tell. Battery and performance have been super good for me. Can't wait to watch your next video as you put in the best content. Thank you. Khalid Ahmed says, the reason I switched to the beta is because I was having connectivity issues. As soon as I lose Wi-Fi, the mobile data won't work. I had to toggle airplane mode to turn data on. I'm on beta 7 and I still have this problem. Quite frustrating. Or I am on beta since beta 7 and still have this problem. Mario Goucher says, iPhone 12 Pro and XR here. This beta has been great. It could be released to the public and most users would be fine with it. Battery is back to normal compared to beta 6, was somewhat okay with beta 7. Craig's Paranormal said, there's a lot of app reloads and lockups. The battery on my iPhone 11 after the recalibration is horrible, getting 3 hours at most of screen on time. For this being right before the event for the official public release, this is kind of bad. Not sure if the internal new ways of updates is better or worse. I'm not a fan of iOS 14.5 regardless of features. My battery life and the app freezes and reload are so bad it's out of anything good they brought. Also, the unlock with watch maybe works 1 in 4 times. I would say you have something wrong with that particular install or something using your background data, because generally most people say battery life's phenomenal. Mine improved greatly even after recalibration on the iPhone 11, for example. It seems to be usually if there's dramatic battery drain or something, there's an app using it. So hopefully it's something that simple. Otherwise, you may have to fully reinstall to fix it. And then finally, Matej Licaret says, I've been using it on my iPhone 11 Pro Max and it's perfect. I'm really happy that Apple didn't release the RC build yet. Lately, Apple has had too many bugs and this is a step in the right direction. For me, at least, battery life is amazing. I easily get 8 hours of screen on time. We'll go over here, 8 hours of screen on time, and usually have 15% left at 91% battery health. And all of the bugs that I experienced in beta 6 and older have been resolved. So that's it for iOS 14.5 beta 8. That was a pretty big surprise for most of us. We thought the release candidate would be out a couple betas ago, but I think it was because of the Apple event coming up where we'll see a new iPad, AirPods, Apple TV, and hopefully a new iMac. Let me know what you're most excited about in the comments below. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.